Hi guys, so I'm Hannah Miller and I'm here representing AgGrad. I'm curious to know how many of you know what AgGrad is? Wow, lots of hands. Awesome, cool. So you're part of the communities. How many of you are like in the Snapchat community or in the Facebook community? Cool. So we kind of crowdsourced questions for this panel on how to land your first job, and so we found some awesome people to talk to you. So I'm just going to run through and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So I'm Hannah Miller again. I contract with AgGrad. I'm actually a senior strategic planner at Barefoot Proximity. And that's all you need to know.
I'm Steve Taylor, CEO of the Appaloosa Horse Club, and I am living proof that your college major doesn't always relate to your career path. I majored in history and political science and have had various positions, including bull barber, newspaper editor, and a few other things in the association world.
Good afternoon, I'm Marvin Kokash. I work for I'm the Senior Vice President for Industry and Member Services for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association in Denver. Actually, I'm living proof that you actually use your degree. I've been with NCBA for 25 years. I actually have a degree in marketing, and I grew up on a ranch, so I get to use both of those things every day. I think there's a lot of optimism in agriculture. I'm excited to see all the young folks here and to hear some of their questions. So.
I'm Steve Drake, president of Drake SCD Group. We're a consulting company, which is because I sold my association management company about 7 years ago and needed something to do. I grew up on a bull farm in Ohio. Got a degree in ag economics and journalism. Worked initially at the Associated Press, spent 10 years in higher education, public relations, and then the rest of the career in association management.
Good afternoon, I'm Lyle Orwig. I'm originally from East Central Illinois. I was raised on a corn and soybean farm. I haven't grown up yet, so I don't know what I'll be when I grow up. Was a state officer in FFA in Illinois, which took me to the AgCom program there. Spent a couple years at Ryman Publications in Milwaukee, then went to agri-marketing for 6 years, and then back into the agency business for the last 35.
Steve, you mentioned what your degree was, but you didn't say where you went to school. Did you go to Ohio State?
It was before it was called the.
I did go to Ohio State for my undergrad and master's in AgCom, so not too long ago I was one of you. My name is Hannah Thompson-Weeman. I'm the Vice President of Communications at the Animal Agriculture Alliance. We're a nonprofit organization based in Arlington, so right outside of DC, and our mission is to bridge the communication gap between farm and fork. So obviously lots of ag communication things I learned from Dr. Rhodes, who you know as Dr. Buck, back in the day at Ohio State. Before I came to the Alliance, I worked for several years in marketing and PR for Farm Credit, so also obviously use those skills in that role. So excited to be here with you and hopefully give you some tips and answer questions you might have.
Awesome.
You didn't tell them about your internship.
I also interned at Charleston Arwood. It was wonderful too.
Yep. Lots of connections here. So let me run through how we're going to do this. We have a couple questions that I said we crowdsourced from our communities, and then we're going to open it up to y'all. If you don't have questions, don't worry, I have backup questions, but I'd love for y'all to have some questions. So we're going to start it off with, what do you think is the most important thing for a young person to do when applying for a job? And whoever wants to start, I can.
I figured since I have you to start. Really, the most important thing that I think you all can do when you're getting ready for that first job is to be open-minded. A lot of times people think they have this ideal job in their mind, or even geography-wise, maybe you don't want to move away from home or live outside of your state. But I think the most critical thing to do is not limit yourself by what your preconceived notion might be of what's perfect for you. I hate math and finance. I didn't even want to go to my interview with Farm Credit. I was like, whatever, I'll just go for practice. But I love the people and I love the role, and I ended up taking that position over several others. So that's my number one piece of advice when you get ready to look for that that full-time position is be open-minded, be very open to where you might end up, because down the road you can always move, you can always go back home, but if you go back there to begin with, you might not ever make it anywhere else. So that's my big piece of advice, is to be open-minded, try new things, and don't limit yourself by what you think you might want right off the bat.
Thanks, Hannah.
My top three would: number one, be yourself; number two, be on time; and number three, do your homework.
I don't know if I have three, but when applying, I would first of all say, follow the instructions. If you're supposed to apply online, apply online. If you're supposed to apply through snail mail, do it through snail mail. If they want writing samples, include writing samples. If they ask for references, include references. So read the posting and follow the instructions, and you'll be fine.
I got a question. How many of you are applying for multiple jobs at one time? Most of you. Know what job you're applying for. And make sure. The second thing is you'd be shocked how many mistakes that a marketing guy finds on the communication person's resume and their cover letter. Have somebody actually read a proof that doesn't know you that well. Have somebody take a look at what you're about to embark on. That's part of the homework process.
Marvin, would you say that it's important to customize each job you're applying to?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Don't just say I'm interested in, quote, a position. If you really want that position, it's going to show up, especially in most companies now are online. That stuff really sticks out. That it shows that I want to work for your company and I want this position.
And I can back that part up. Even if it is online, go ahead and use actual sentences
Yeah.
and punctuate. It impresses us old goobers. And then I think the other part of it is, if it's at all possible, make sure you find out who the specific person is you need to address that application to. And then going back, the other part of it is do a little research, find out not just what that job entails, but what the whole company or organization is all about, and explain a little bit about why your particular skills or interests fit the mission.
Yeah.
Be mindful of the person at the other end that's getting your resume. We might be getting 50 or 60 resumes. As we're sorting them, I don't know about you guys, but I'm putting them in further study, maybe, heck no. So your job is to get over here into they want to follow, want to look at you more, not the heck no column. But just be mindful of what we're at our end.
Steve, how quick are you making those decisions?
Well,
Are you just taking a look and then going back to them?
I usually go through and scan first.
Okay.
Look at each one. I am looking, if they're typos, you're probably in the maybe or probably not. So back to proofing, absolutely.
So we use a system called HireRel, and ironically, I'm just in the process of selecting a candidate for basically a group of fresh college graduates. I had about 80 applicants for this position, and I would spend at most the first blush through them. I would get an email come up, and I would spend probably less than about 3 minutes scanning through the qualifications so I knew what we were looking for and making sure that there was no typos.
Okay, so can any of you speak to someone that really stood out in an interview and maybe what it was about them that stood out in the interview?
I have a good story for you. I had a young lady apply for a part-time position in our registration department just last year and a half ago or so. And she was very relaxed, very comfortable, very engaging, showed her personality, which was a big plus for me right at the beginning. But when we got to the point where we were talking about customer service, she said, well, I learned a hard lesson. She's a horse person, so she was in the market for a new truck to pull her trailer and take her horse places. She went to the dealer to talk about torque ratios and pulling power and mileage and cubic inches and all that stuff. And the salesperson said, well, where's your husband? She said, that's when I realized that customer service really is important, and you got to know about asking the right questions, and you got to understand the position the other person is coming from. And guess what? I hired her.
Like I told you, I'm in the process of it. I've got 3 final candidates for a position that we're hiring for. We've interviewed 2. The first one, she was very well prepared. Again, think about this. It went from 70 to 3 people that we've flown in. The first person that we've interviewed, very studied on our organization. And that's great. She's interviewed she's a very smart book learner, you can just tell. The second person, much different approach. She told us straight out, she told us a little bit about the organization. Then she's like, I really want you to get to know me. So I want to talk about, I want to get to know you as a company and you as people that I'm going to be working for. But she says, that's really important to me, is to understand that I'm going to go into an organization that's the right fit for me as a person. So I don't know how we're going to land because they're both great, but we have a panel of people that will serve different opinions on these, but it's 2 different approaches.
For us, we have a 4-phase that you have to go through. First of all, as Marvin was saying earlier, it starts with an email, so spend a fair amount of time. You've learned how to market things through awareness, interest, understanding, trial, and preference. Well, it's the same way when you're looking for a job. First is awareness. How do you get noticed? So first thing is getting through that email. The second thing will then be a phone interview with our HR group. And then if you make it through that, then it'll be a Skype interview with 2 to 3 people, depending on what the position is. The person that you'll be reporting to, their supervisor, and then a peer who's in the same job that you would have. And then the successful candidates from that come in for a personal interview. One of the things that a lot of people fall down on in my story is last year we had a bunch of people for an entry-level job, and when they came through and did the interview process, they walked into my office and looked around, and one thing they noticed was that in the corner in the glass case was a typewriter. It happened to be the typewriter that I first used. Those are things that have keys and you punch them in the type. But anyway, it still sit there as a relic because I already have a boat anchor. And so then the follow-up that she sent me came as a note that was written on a typewriter instead of sending. So creativity can be done in many different ways, and that really stood out for us.
Well, I think Hannah meant this question to be positive, but I'm going to tell a story in the opposite direction. Let me refresh your memory. I'm with the Animal Agriculture Alliance. We just interviewed for an administrative assistant position, and we had a candidate who was awesome. She was stellar. She had all the skills. She was great. Towards the end of the interview, we ask, have you ever been to a farm before? What do you know about farms? And she proceeds to tell us that her uncle had a farm growing up and she hated the idea of eating animals, so she's been a vegetarian since she was 8. Obviously, that was not going to be a cultural fit. I mean, that's all well and good. She's totally free to make her own dining choices, but that was not going to be a fit with an organization that works to communicate with consumers about what goes on farms, that they should feel confident in eating animal products. So just a big lesson in making sure that you're a cultural fit, and it goes back to educating the organization. Maybe she didn't really know what we did or understand what we did, but make sure you know that you're a good fit for the organization, because it's not going to be a good result on either end if it's something that's going to make you uncomfortable or not going to be a good fit for your values.
Awesome. I want to go back to Lyle talking about standing out and ask you if there has been anything when you've been hiring people that has stood out to you, whether it's a unique resume or how they applied or maybe something they said or how they corresponded, if anything like that stood out. Can anyone talk to that? I know Lyle would answer.
Well, honestly, we interview for a lot of interns, so I'm interacting with dozens of college students like you throughout the year. We need one for this fall, so I gave you the flyer, but we also hire for spring, summer. And honestly, just following the basic steps that I'm sure you've been taught will make you stand out. We hardly ever get thank you notes, much less typed ones on a typewriter. So it sounds like a gimme or a no-brainer, but most people do not follow those steps. So doing those things, sending a quick email after a phone interview and saying thank you, sending a longer message if you do an in-person or a Skype interview and thanking them for their time, and just following those basic steps that you've probably learned in a class will make you stand out, along with the grammar and the other things that we've talked about as being that base level, because you'd be surprised how many people don't do those basic things.
We're in the client service business, we're in the agency business, so what's important to us is timeliness. So having an interview on Monday and not getting anything for a week or 10 days is not good enough. Our clients call us today because they want something today. If they want it tomorrow, they'll call us tomorrow. So it's really important to be timely with everything and be available. And I think the things that stand out are those who do that quickly, and then obviously all the other things that have been mentioned about no typos, have somebody else read it, make sure that you've addressed it to the people, make sure that you ask for cards from everyone that you talk to, and write a note to each one of them. What often stands out are those who do hand notes instead of just sending an email, but you got to do that quickly. One that stood out for me in the last 6 months was an individual interviewed, and before she left, she sat in the car, hand wrote the notes, came back in and put them in our mailbox so that they were there the next day.
I just thought of something before I forget really quickly. On Lyle's thought about responsiveness and quickly, that's also huge. And now is the time in your life where you have the most spare time than you will ever have. So pay attention to your email, call back, schedule interviews quickly. Applying for jobs gets a million times harder when you already have one. So it also goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning about casting a wide net. Now is the time to apply for a bunch of things and interview for a bunch of things, because it gets a lot harder when you look for that next job and you're not as available. You don't have as much free time. So now is the time to take advantage of the free time, the opportunity that you have to really cast a wide net and examine a lot of different opportunities.
I just did what Lyle said, a handwritten thank you note within a day. Don't wait.
This is during the interview process, when you're meeting face to face. Don't forget to smile. I look around this room, Jill, I love your smile. You're looking straight at me. And I can just, you'll be amazed, especially people with a lot of experience. They really watch your body language. Really do. They really pay attention to that. Because when you're in meetings, guess what? I don't care which organization, you meet a lot. And so you need to be able to read people's body language, and that's a skill that gets honed over time. So never forget to smile. Smile and look at everyone. So thanks for smiling, Jill. Good.
And that goes not only in the in-person meeting, but if you haven't learned this in one of your classes, it makes a huge difference when you're on the phone. You can tell immediately when someone is or is not. So before you have that interview, first of all, stand up for it. Second of all, put a mirror in front of you so you make yourself smile.
I think just to summarize that part of it, I think it's really important if you can take the opportunity to show us that you have a personality. Show us that you've got a wide variety of life interests. Show us that you can fit in with the culture of the other goofy people we have in the office and interact with all kinds of folks who are going to be there as your co-workers. On the negative side, I was going to remind you of a person I interviewed, and she said, "When should I expect to hear from you?" And I said, well, we'll probably make a decision within the next week and a half to 2 weeks. Email I got from her at least every 2 days, 3 or 4 phone calls. It was very aggravating and it didn't impress me at all. So that's maybe on the downside. Don't overdo the responsiveness to being, thanking us for the interview.
And I'm actually going to add something to this. In some of my more recent jobs, I have done a pretty creative resume, and I don't know if, I think it's been put up in the AgGrad Facebook group if you've seen it before. If not, we'll make sure to post it. But recently, I brought in Taylor, the AgGrad intern, into my current company and was told by 2 different people that they had circulated my resume to their children and said, if you aren't doing this and you want to work in the creative side of things, you should be doing this. So depending on what you want to do, know your audience. If you're going to work somewhere traditional, don't send them a big, bright resume. But if you are thinking about working on the creative side, figure out how you can share some of your personality. I think we're going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open it up to y'all. So a big question we got across our communities was, how does an intern leverage themselves for a position at a company, for a full-time gig?
Well, I've certainly had my experiences with good and bad with interns. My favorite was the one who I found at her cubicle one day with her arms folded and hands folded in front of her. And I said, what are you working on? She said, well, I'm waiting for somebody to tell me what to do. I thought, well, there are 3 people within 15 feet of you. Maybe you could go ask them. So that's part of it. Just seek out opportunities to help other folks in the building or in the office or in the network, whatever it is. Show an interest in all aspects of the business, because chances are these days you're going to reach a point in whatever job you have where somebody is either downsizing or somebody leaves because of personal life getting in the way, and you suddenly have 3 more pieces to your job description. So understand all the pieces that are going on in the building, even if it's not something you think you're particularly good at. Just understand how the work flows, understand who does what, and I think that'll get you a long way.
So I do have experience hiring some interns. So we have at our NCBA convention, about 18 interns. So we get to see these interns for 4 days. That's it. Their key to success is when they come to our convention, we bring them in as interns to work and to seek out when we give them free time. But if they've got work and some things, some things are slower than others, the best ones always seek others out or stop by them when they see an employee badge to say, is there anything I can do, help you guys do? And it doesn't matter that even if they're off assignment, there's nothing in your life that will ever replace good old-fashioned hard work. Secondly, with an intern who I hired, who was interning in our Washington, D.C. office. Now I have him in Denver. This young man made a point of making sure that he met all the members of our management team when he had the opportunity. When I was going to D.C., he was a policy intern. He knew who I was. Guess what Chase did? He made sure he made sure he found me and that I met him. And we actually had a great conversation. And we talked about things that are memorable. And so therefore, when I had a position come up and all of a sudden his resume come through, like, oh yeah, I remember Chase, and I hired him.
Show up on time, do whatever you're asked, volunteer to do more, and I think you're right, network with the people you're working with. It's really important to get to know the other staff, because, and I've had this happen with the intern, about the time the internship was done, we had an opening. If the rest of the staff really liked them, guess what? They got hired.
I'll say one correction to that, Steve, show up early.
Well, okay. Yeah.
The one word that you can't use as an intern is no. Because you won't get criticized for trying to do something and maybe not doing it as well as an employee. But if it's, no, I don't want to do that, or no, I can't do that, it's okay to say, I can do that, but it won't be until I get these 5 things done, unless you think that this is a higher priority. But the one word you should never use in an internship is no.
I think any internship you have, you should treat as a 3-month, 6-month, 9-month, year-long, whatever it is. It's a job interview. You're constantly being evaluated, and the Alliance, we only have 4. Tomorrow will be 5 when our new admin person, who's not the vegetarian, starts. We don't have a lot of full-time positions come open, but the last time we did, we had an intern who was just knocking out of the park. We didn't even interview anyone else. We didn't post it because we knew that's who we wanted to fill that role. And the next time we have any kind of open position, our intern candidates or interns from the past, they're the first people we're going to think of and who we're going to go to and contact for those positions. And even though we might not, Lyle hires people all the time. Our other members, our board members, NCBA is a member of the Alliance. They hire people all the time. So wherever you are, somebody knows somebody that can help connect you. So even if you don't think you want to work there, or there might not be an opportunity for you, it's a job interview. And what everyone else said, coming early, being on time, being professional in all instances, dressing professionally. We've had interns, we walk in the office and they're watching a movie on their computer. Don't watch movies on your work computer. I don't know why I have to say that, but apparently we do. And just the other thing is you're there to help and lighten the load, not to create extra work. I actually know organizations that have stopped hiring interns because it's too much work. Someone has to manage them all the time. So I think someone made this point earlier, but this is something that my 5th grade teacher used to say, and I've started saying it to interns all the time, is to see 3 before you see me. So look out 3 sources to answer your question, whether it's Google, whether it's our Drive, whether it's the other intern. Look for ways to find your answer before you go to your boss or your supervisor. So you can say, hey, I've looked into this. I don't know if this is the right answer, but this is what I've looked into and what I think I'm going to do, and that will make you stand out. So just take it seriously, act like a full-time employee, and you'll be treated like a full-time employee and may have an opportunity later on.
Also remember that the internship is also to learn what you don't want to do. Within the agency, there are multiple places for interns. We have interns in media, we have interns in account service, we have interns in creative, we have interns in accounting, we have interns in HR, we have interns in video and out in the field. So if you have stood out and done a tremendous job in media, but say, man, I hate doing all the numbers and I hate doing all that aspects of it, that's fine. Now you know that you don't want to do that, but you can also raise your hand and say, I'd really like to experience public relations or creative or whatever, and that opportunity may be there just as well.
Come up here, Lyle. And when I was at Charles Norwig, my internship was in the reputation management department. So a lot of crisis management, looking at influencers, and I loved it. But there was some extra time one day, so I helped out one of the PR teams, and I had to cold call all these reporters and ask them if they got our press release about weather insurance. I'm a livestock person, don't care about weather insurance, don't know about weather insurance, and a lot of these people were like, yes, I got your email, or I'm not interested, or have someone who knows something about this product call me back. So I learned that while I love reputation management, I did not want to do a job where I had to cold call reporters and ask them if they got my email. So to Lyle's point, it's okay to not like what you're doing. You're going to be done with it eventually, but try as many different things as you can to learn about what you like and what you don't ever want to do again.
As you complete your internships, you need to also really understand the fact that each of us get phone calls from each other when we start to look for team members. And I cannot tell you, as a trade association as NCBA, we get so many calls asking about our convention interns because they're looking for somebody with a livestock background, specifically, whether it's agency people or animal health or whatever, that they have a specific need in the livestock business. So a successful intern at our convention or within our DC office, if we don't have a position, somebody else certainly does.
So mine goes back to kind of what you guys were talking about at the beginning with like resumes and going through the stacks and stuff. And you talked about like typos being something that would put them in the no pile. But are there specific things that you can think about that would automatically put someone in the yes pile, or just good tips for us to know as we're putting that stuff together?
Well, I'll make a quick confession. I really just scanned through your qualifications, background, that sort of thing. To me, the cover letter tells a pretty big story, and I like for it to be personal, not flowery and with such high ambitions that if you're not appointed ambassador to France next year, you're going to be upset. Talk to me about your life lessons, even tell me what your parents taught you. I like to know the personal side of that, but to me the cover letter really is one of the key things that I look for, and it has to, like everything else, it's nice to have a good intro and a good middle and a good close, but that's really important to keep that story about you and why you're a qualified person.
When your resume very closely aligns to the qualifications of the job that you are applying for.
One word for you, portfolio. All of you are AgCom students, you've got to have one. If I can follow your portfolio, I think Hannah has a really great example of an online one. The employee I was mentioning that we hired on full-time has a great one as well. But if I can see that you've already done what I'm going to be asking you to do and done it successfully, that immediately makes me want to talk to you. Because like I mentioned, we have a lot going on. I don't necessarily have a lot of time. Obviously, you're here to learn and we're going to review your work, but you already have a base point that you're starting from. That's a great place. That makes me want to hire you. Sheridan is our intern, one of our interns this summer. She had some great work examples already out the door. If you've already been published somewhere, that's awesome, and that makes me immediately want to talk to you. So you've got to have an online portfolio if you want to stand out for any kind of creative content production communications role.
100% agree. I will hire you unless you have an online portfolio. Is there a question over here?
Would y'all like to share some phone interview tips? I've had a lot of those recently, not just for internships, but for scholarships as well, and I seem to maybe struggle a little bit more with those than live interviews.
First off is making sure you're somewhere quiet that you can focus, so no distractions, in some kind of an office, close the door. If you can use a landline, sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes cell phones can be kind of buggy. And somebody mentioned earlier practice. There's practice. Look at different questions. Think about how you're going to answer them. A lot of times the worst phone interviews we have are the people who don't say anything. They give you a one-word answer. You have to pull it out of them to get them to respond to you. And a lot of being able to succeed is having the ability to carry a conversation with anyone and share what you've done. So that's the first thing, is to look at questions, just Google what common interview questions might be and start thinking about how you would answer them. Something that our CEO at the Alliance does, her daughter's in college and applying for internships, and they would do total mock phone interviews. They would schedule a time, and our CEO, Kay, would call her daughter, and they would run through the whole interview, not breaking character until the end when she gave feedback. So ask your advisor, ask someone who can do that with you, and just get comfortable with talking and elaborating and sharing your answers, because the ones that I find most painful are when I can't get someone to tell me anything. That doesn't make me want to talk to you anymore.
Easiest way to do that is to use your own cell phone and video yourself. And just set it up, and then call any of your classmates and give them the questions that you think should be asked, and watch yourself on video. It's scary. I know, I did it.
I don't want to do that either.
I would echo what Lyle said earlier. Stand up, because your voice will project much better. Also, prepare ahead of time. Not only to know what you want to get across, and make sure you get that across. So have 3 key points. The reality is most employers are lousy interviewers for jobs. So know that you're going to be asked, tell me about yourself. You're going to be asked, tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. Tell me what you like to do, don't know. I had one where I was being interviewed by a board for a CEO job. They asked 2 questions. They flew me all the way to Oklahoma to ask me 2 questions. Thank God I had 3 pages of questions to ask them. And for 45 minutes, I interviewed them. I didn't take the job. But seriously, be really, really prepared with key questions about the company. Not how much are they going to pay you or anything like that. Real key points about the job. One of the questions I always like to ask is, what's your definition of success for me in 3 years? What's it look like? What have I done for you to be successful? But prepare for that and just know the key questions you're going to get. Tell me about yourself. So have a 30-second answer.
I can't tell you how much the energy changes when you're actually up talking to people and answer the questions on the phone. I mean, you think about, watching how much my energy changed when I can actually use my hands to talk. And versus sitting on the phone like this, you stand up and talk to yourself, and that's, a lot of people, that's the best way they like to express themselves. So, again, if you've ever been on television, we have a television show behind, you have to ramp up your energy even at a whole other level when you're doing anything from a media standpoint, because the telephone and the television camera will suck it out of you. So you really have to amp it up, and don't be afraid to smile at yourself and giggle at yourself too, because that's going to help bring your energy and really relax yourself.
Good idea, standing up.
And I think be ready for that last question where there's a silent, awkward pause and they say, is there anything else you'd like to add? Go ahead and have your debate wrap-up speech ready to go and pound them with that.
Yeah, and there's some great resources online. I know that I've gone through that in practice. They talk a little bit about sometimes before, like raising your hands up and like walking around, it's like a power pose. But practicing is going to get you so far. Even if you're the kind of person that needs to have something like written down in front of you. The other thing I think is kind of scary is when they ask you that question that you don't know. Don't panic. Just take a deep breath and then think through it. So I think we have time for probably 1 or 2 more questions.
One thing to add to that, it's okay to say I don't know.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Okay, my question is, how do you take a failed learning opportunity between an industry member or like your boss with an internship and yourself and try to rebuild that bridge and kind of like save, I don't want to say save face because that sounds bad, but to prove to them that like, hey, I know I screwed up and I'm sorry, I would like to have another chance. How do you handle that in a situation?
The number one thing is to be self-aware about it. Don't try to cover it up or pretend it didn't happen or skirt around it. As soon as it happens, as soon as there is something that's gone wrong, take that time, go and explain, I found myself in this situation, I'm not sure that I handled it properly, can you help me move forward from here, and get their feedback. But it's being honest, being upfront, being transparent, and doing it as quickly as possible. And that self-awareness, that's the biggest thing. If you can acknowledge that you didn't handle something the way you should have, that's huge, and that you're asking for feedback versus just hoping it goes away and you never have to deal with it.
You did it yourself right now.
Yeah.
What you just asked. I messed up. How do I make up for it? What did I do wrong?
What did I do? How did I burn the bridge? I just asked a question.
I've actually had people after the interview process over and they did not get the position. And it's okay to email back and just say, thank you, Mr. Kokash, for your time. I really appreciate the panel meeting with us. Is there, I'm always looking to improve myself. Do you have any tips for the future for either positions within NCBA or within the other organizations that you might provide to me? And I think that's definitely okay, because at that point you are just looking to counsel somebody professionally, and all of us up here, we would do that in a heartbeat. I mean, that's we getting matured in our careers. That's something we always want to do, is see the young Turks rise in the business. So.
Okay, I think that's about time. So if y'all would give our lovely panel a round of applause.
Hannah, I know we're out of time, but I got to be really honest with the young people, and I think everybody up here, if I could give you any last advice, is your use of social media. There is not a candidate that that doesn't hit our office, for when we fly them in here, that we are not looking at their social media. Every position in almost every organization does that now. If we see somebody that is, all their pictures are them out clubbing and all doing all these things, and there is a tiebreaker moment, it's like, I gotta send somebody to the Idaho Cattle Association convention by themselves. Are they gonna work or are they gonna club? So that's really important. And I tell this to my kids all the time. So never put anything on social media that you wouldn't want to explain to your mother. I think that's advice.
Yeah, so that's a great segue right now. So AgGrad just released a LinkedIn guide. So if you're on LinkedIn and maybe you haven't filled out your portfolio, it's just a really good step-by-step how to get your LinkedIn leveraged up. The address is aggrad.com/LinkedIn. And that's how you can download it. It's a printable PDF. But I'd encourage you all to be active on social media and be putting the right things out there.
That's all my turn.
We're communicators.
Yeah,
we have a lot to
to
share.
We're all going to be here all week, so
Yeah.
feel free to come up and ask questions that you didn't get answered.
Yeah,
We only bite once.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate you all.